of the reasons why I feel like people who are called to ministry can do this very
Yes.
effectively, specifically with law enforcement, because their experiences really impact them in ways that they probably don't even want to acknowledge. It is a spiritual battle that they're in, whether they call it that or not.
Mm-hmm.
They'll call it heaviness, they'll call it darkness. You know what I mean? And it's very difficult for them to leave that at work. It influences the way they look at life because of
Yeah.
what they see, what they understand human beings have the capacity to do. It
Mm-hmm.
it influences them in ways that they don't want it to, you know? And so as someone in ministry, I can understand that. I can understand how it changes the way you look at the world when you deal with darkness. You know,
Yeah.
you're fighting for people. You're defending what is right. You're trying to help people who can't help themselves, and that wears on you as a person. And to the credit of the culture of these agencies, they acknowledge that there's a spiritual component to the
Mm-hmm.
wellness of these people, and what it
Yeah.
looks like. Obviously, they give them the liberty as individuals to decide, but I think it's worth noting, and it's something that these agencies put in front of their people probably a lot more now than they did in years past,
Mm-hmm.
to say, you need to take care of yourself in these ways in order to do your job well, in order to be present for your family, and
Yeah.
and that's part of the role that we have, is that supportive role. And I tell them, sometimes I get the question, well, what exactly do you do? And I just say, I'm here to cheer you on because I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate what you do. And I want you to know that there are a lot of people who are grateful for what you get up and do every day. And if there's something I can do to encourage you, that's what I'm here to do.
Well, and if it's encouragement that they need that day, then you give that to them. If it's
Hmm.
containment, you give that to them. If it's comfort, or if it's
Hmm.
maybe they just need some acceptance that day. Um,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
that's the powerful um, relational nutrients that
yeah,
comes with you being
absolutely.
present with people. There's
Hmm.
one piece of that is that I feel like is a very powerful tool that we as pastors, you as a pastor, that of course, definitely in your chaplaincy, but I think a lot of pastors overlook the power of empathy and
Yeah.
how powerful that is. That sometimes that could be considered, weak or insignificant, especially to
Yeah.
some of us men, you know.
Sure.
But I see it as such a
Hmm.
powerful tool. Whether somebody's sitting in my office back here as a parishioner of our church that, we're talking
Hmm.
through an issue in their life,
Yeah.
or, you're sitting there with a dispatcher who is watching her husband in a gun battle. There's
Hmm.
so much power in tuning in to what that person is feeling and experiencing in that moment. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think, one of the first things that I thought of as you were, directing us that way, Ryan, is Jesus couldn't carry his cross in his
Hmm.
humanity, and I think we understand the strain that his body was under, the way he was suffering in that moment. The Bible lets us know it became physically impossible for him to
Hmm.
carry that cross, and I feel like as a minister, um, we live in kind of that tension of, when is it appropriate, right, to maybe be vulnerable or to share for the
Hmm.
purpose of empathy, and understanding, but I think for me, one of the things that I have found to just help me navigate some of that is just the idea that, a call to ministry, a call to leadership, whatever it sounds like, in that particular role that you're serving, it's a role that you're called to serve people And
Mhm.
sometimes the way you serve people, you help them, you lift them up, is just by coming right alongside them with some understanding,
Yeah.
because people want to be heard.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've started a conversation kind of casually, and that person just talks and just takes the
Yeah.
conversation in a direction that frankly I would have probably not been able to take it.
Mhm.
But it's about that presence that says, you're safe with me.
Mhm.
And I am not going to judge you for whatever you're about to say. And even if I don't understand how you feel, it matters to me that you feel that way. And I
Yeah.
think we see Jesus model that
I I
for
think that's a
us.
great yeah, that's a great point. It doesn't matter that we even agree with their emotion or whatever. It's that we get them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
feeling some deep sadness, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I if my facial expression is kinda picking up on that, and I'm kind of mirroring a little bit of that, and I may even say, "Man, Kristen, that really feels sad."
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how a simple sentence, a simple word like that can say it can connect with them and lift them out of that sadness even, or you're just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there with them in the sadness. You don't even have to lift them out of it, but it
Yeah.
feels it
Mm-hmm.
feels so good to not be alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking about that, I have such a clear image in my mind when we went to the cemetery to bury my dad.
Mhm.
I saw George Hill standing at that gate, waiting for our family to pull into the cemetery. And I will never forget what that did to me, to realize I remember saying to mom, "Oh, George is here." Like, I just couldn't believe it. I was so grateful. And I
Mhm.
don't think, Ryan, we spoke in that moment because he wasn't leading the committee, he wasn't doing anything. He just stood outside of our, family circle there
It's just his presence.
at the graveside. But it communicated to me his empathy.
Mhm.
That even though I probably wasn't going to tell him how I was feeling, if I had, he would have handled it wonderfully. He would have made
Yeah.
me feel safe. I have no doubt. But I didn't have that rapport with him at that time. But just seeing him let me know, not just that he cared about my dad, but he cared about us. And he understood the importance of just being there,
Yeah. He got in the
just
well
being there.
with you.
He did. He really did. And I feel like that is a picture of empathy where here I really didn't have a close connection with him, but by
Mhm.
virtue of what he said to us by being there, said everything. Because he
Yeah.
wasn't going to be able to fix anything that day. There was nothing he could have said to make it better. Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, I think sometimes maybe it's part of our Pentecostal culture that we struggle with those tense moments. We feel
I
like we
think
have,
that's human culture.
yeah, yeah. And but I think too, especially as spirit-filled believers, we have faith for so much. We believe the word of God. We have great expectation and we should, but there are times where those expressions just aren't appropriate. They're just not helpful, and it's okay. There's
Mhm.
not all this pressure on me, even though I believe what Jesus said, that the spirit within us tells us what to say, teaches us how to respond. That even if
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel that happening for me in that moment, I can live in the peace of God. Just use this presence, just use this effort that I'm making just to make myself available, And I say that often to people, because not everyone's open to it. Not everybody, reciprocates, the effort and the maybe the friendliness or whatever. Hey, if you ever needed anything, I
Hmm.
would be happy to help you, and even just the practical elements around campus and stuff. Again, you're showing that you care by not waiting to be asked to do anything. You're already in place. You're already available. That's what you're communicating through ministry of presence.